Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're going to talk all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. Lots of basketball, a little football mixing in. Football you have with you always. Spring football right around the corner. Logan, how are you, man?
Doing good. Trying to warm back up after a couple of days up in Kentucky. I tell you what, and the locals there were bragging about how warm it was compared to, over the weekend. But, I got up there, there was snow everywhere, and, it wasn't actually snowing when I got there, but there was snow piled up on each side of the road and the parking lots and stuff. And it had about an 18-mile-an-hour wind, and it was pretty chilly up that way.
Hey, and it's getting a little chilly down here. Kind of winter coming back a little bit. We've been pretty mild. Haven't had that those mid-teens or anything that we sometimes get in these parts. But basketball travel can be kind of interesting, man. When you get up around Lexington, if you're going to Fayetteville or Knoxville, some of those road trips can get kind of dicey. It's kind of dicey for the Bulldogs. Rebels too, both coming off big midweek losses. State hung around a little longer at Kentucky than Ole Miss did against Alabama. Logan, let's just start with you, man. What did you see there in Lexington? What kind of turned Kentucky's way there late?
Yeah, it was just a really strange game from Mississippi State's perspective, and it really started right before the game ever even got going. Noticed a change in the starting lineup. Lamar Peters coming off the bench from Mississippi State, which I thought was really strange. And I was like, well, maybe Howland sees something in the lineups that he saw a matchup issue that he didn't like. So, I really didn't know, couldn't ask about it until after the game. Come to find out, the reason Lamar Peters didn't start that game is because his assistant coaches didn't mark him as a starter. He actually marked the wrong person as a starter. And so by the time they realized the mistake, the official had already saw the official book. And so they had to start the 5 players that were marked, and Lamar Peters was not one of them. So just kind of a strange start. Mississippi State actually opened up the game 4-0, right out of the chutes, took a 4-0 lead. The problem was what happened immediately after that. Kentucky went on an 18-2 run following that 4-0 start from Mississippi State. Point lead at halftime. Mississippi State was able to get it within 2 with about 13 minutes left to go in that ball game. Kentucky calls a timeout when State got it down to 2, and then Kentucky just dominated from that point on during that ball game. Some strange things happened for Mississippi State. They shot 3 of 20 from 3-point range in that game. Mississippi State's a pretty good 3-point shooting team. Definitely was not happening at Rupp Arena. They just could not get the shots to fall. Like I said, 3 for 20. Didn't shoot it very well from the field either, 31% from the field. They're starting 4 and starting 5, Eric Holman and Abdullah Dew, combined for 2 shots the whole ball game. They shot the ball twice and missed them both. So they got 0 points out of their starting 4 and their starting 5 players. And just that coupled with the fact that they didn't shoot the 3 ball well, just, led to Kentucky running away with that ball game late. I was not impressed with Kentucky. I don't think that was one of Kentucky's better teams that Calipari's got players. They got it just wasn't. Yeah, they're ranked number 8 right now, and that's maybe about right. I don't know, but like I said, I've seen a lot better teams at Kentucky than the one they currently have right now.
Yeah, I was not impressed with Kentucky either. Now, they're on a major network all the time, but I haven't watched much of them until the other night. I was home for a lot of that State and Kentucky game, and it's just not the same level of athlete. They're still good, still talented players, and their recruiting is better than a lot of others in the conference. But it's just not the same kind of Kentucky team right now. I thought when State made its comeback in the second half and got the lead down to 2, it just looked like Kentucky was missing a lot of shots and opportunities in that stretch. Now, their big guy stepped out and hit some shots there, and they did pull away at the end. What's going on with Eric Holman? It seems like every time I hear his name right now, it's not very good. Now, he didn't play well when Ole Miss won there in Starkville, and obviously struggling in Kentucky. What's his consistency like these days?
It's just inconsistent, and that's kind of the way his career's been all along. No, during the non-conference, he probably played the best he's ever played during his 4-year career at Mississippi State. Was kind of getting the same level of play out of him night in and night out. But since conference play started, it's kind of been reverted back to the way that he was. Just he'll have a good game, then he'll have a bad game. Good game, bad game, and that's kind of where it is right now. I don't know what the problem was the other night. I mean, like I said, they just weren't getting the ball inside at all. They, like I said, they took 23s and just were not working the ball inside at all. Like I said, Abdullah Adu didn't even have a shot attempt, and Eric Holman had 2, and he missed them both, and then that was it. And that just. And both of Eric Holman's shot attempts were from 3-point range, so he didn't have a paint touch at all. So I don't know what the answer is there. Like I said, they've got to be able to work the ball inside, especially in this league. When post play is so key and so important, especially when the threes aren't falling. You've got to be able to work the ball inside. State did get to the free throw line 18 times the other night. Made 14 of those, but like I said, coupled with the fact they couldn't shoot from the field and couldn't shoot from 3-point range and not getting the ball in the post, it just was not a good night offensively for the Bulldogs.
I was not impressed with Adu against Ole Miss, and I think that's one reason Ole Miss was able to win in Starkville, because State was unable to exploit Ole Miss in the post, where they tend to be pretty average. Their strength is their guards. Didn't look like any strength anywhere for the Rebels in Tuscaloosa. They fell behind early and just never ran it. 42-26 at halftime. Even when their 10-game win streak was snapped by LSU, that was a 31-31 game at halftime, and and the Tigers kind of had a 2-minute window where they really took control and then held the lead there at the end. But Ole Miss in that loss much more competitive than the Rebels were against Alabama. Now, after that LSU game, which was about 8 or 9 days ago now, Ole Miss bounced back with a win against Arkansas, which isn't one of the better teams in the league right now, but Ole Miss won in the way that you should against a team that is struggling a little bit. Had a 15, 17-point win and really kind of, held the lead throughout the game and pulled away in the second half. So it was a good kind of bounce back win for Ole Miss, but you wonder what we're seeing from this team now and how it will respond to being handled by Alabama. Nobody else has treated Ole Miss that way this season. So how will this team handle a 74-53 loss, one they really were never in? Actually, I think that score is closer than the game played out. But it'll be interesting to see, because Ole Miss has a tough task at home Saturday morning at 11 against Iowa State in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. Now, looking at the Alabama game, Logan, they were able to exploit the post. I mean, offensively, when Ole Miss is really playing well, they're scoring in the paint, and their guards are getting shots in there, and they got outscored in the paint. Gosh, something like, what do we have here? 34-6 or something like, or 16, something like that. 34-16, Alabama outscores Ole Miss in the paint. But the big thing was rebounding. The Rebels absolutely could not keep Alabama off the offensive glass. Alabama had 20 offensive rebounds to 10 for Ole Miss, and Alabama had 20 second chance points, but also turnovers for the Rebels. All the things that Kermit Davis talks about having to do on the road to win games. It was the first conference road loss for Ole Miss. Kermit Davis has talked about wanting to build this team to win on the road, and they have shown that early in conference play, but not at Alabama. The turnover is really a problem. 16, which is kind of a high number, but it's not the highest number you've ever heard of. Not 18 or 20, but Alabama turned those 16 turnovers into 23 points. 23 points off turnover. So really at inopportune times and places on the floor. And if you can't keep a team off the offensive glass, You're going to give up extra shots in the paint, extra shots at the rim, and that's going to come back on you. And certainly, if you can't maintain possession of the basketball, that's going to hurt as well. And those two key areas, Alabama just dominated against Ole Miss. So we'll see what the Rebels can accomplish Saturday. They'll be back at the Pavilion. You know, most people play better at home. I'm interested to see if this is kind of a regression to the norm for this Ole Miss basketball team. Most teams play better at home. It's harder to win on the road. I don't expect that Ole Miss is going to go on the road and win every time. The Mississippi State game was very impressive for Ole Miss to go into that environment and get a win there. I was impressed when they beat Vanderbilt on the road in the season opener, Logan, but it looks like every time Vanderbilt plays, that win loses a little bit of luster. The Commodores now 0-5 in the conference. I did see that they lost just 88-83 at home to number 1 Tennessee, that game in overtime. So, Vanderbilt backs to the wall, a little bit of urgency. Kind of surprised, Logan, and you saw them, against State, even though their big 5-star freshman guard's no longer with them, still some talent on that team. And I thought against State that Vanderbilt just came out of the block slow and just wasn't very good defensively or offensively.
Yeah, they did, and that was just about as awful a start as I've ever seen from an SEC team. State. I don't think State took advantage of that run. As bad as Vanderbilt was playing to start that ball game, State, scored and built a little bit of a lead. But as bad as Vanderbilt was, I thought State could have extended the lead even more, and they didn't take full advantage of that opportunity, allowed Vanderbilt to kind of get back into the game there towards the end of the first half to start the second half. And, State was able to pull away again. But, then you go to this upcoming Saturday, Mississippi State has a big game with Auburn coming up. Auburn not really not met the expectations they had in the postseason or in the preseason, kind of like Mississippi State, just kind of trying to spin in their wheels a little bit here, to start conference play. I know Auburn's without their big guy, and I don't think he's supposed to play on Saturday either, Wiley. So Mississippi State needs to take advantage of that. They've announced that the Hump is a sellout on Saturday. It should be a good environment. Like I said, Mississippi State's in a tough road stretch. 4 out of 5 games on the road. This is the lone home game during that stretch. So Mississippi State needs to kind of put the hay in the barn while they're at home and try to steal some on the road. Got some key important road games coming up next week at Alabama and then at Ole Miss next Saturday. So, some rivalry type games next week. A big game against a ranked opponent in Auburn. If Mississippi State wants to hang around in that top 25, they definitely need to beat Auburn on Saturday. And like I said, the home crowd's home support's going to be there. Mississippi State usually shoots the ball pretty well at home. They haven't shot the ball particularly well the last couple of games on the road, so they need to and work the ball inside. Like I said, they've got to get some type of scoring out of their 4 and 5. And another thing about that Kentucky game the other night, Parrish, they only had 5 assists in that game, and those came from 2 players, Lamar Peters and Nick Weatherspoon. Lamar Peters had 3 assists. Nick Weatherspoon had 2 assists. 2 assists on 19 made baskets. No other player had an assist in that ball game. So they need to share the basketball a little bit better than what they've been doing and need to definitely shoot it a lot better.
So, Logan, do you watch Andy Griffith? You're an Andy Griffith fan?
Every once in a while. I know a lot of folks, Andy Griffith, after the WCBI news around these parts, the whistling starts and Andy Griffith comes on.
Hey, that's a staple now. If I'm at the house, I get away from Wheel of Fortune as quickly as I can. But I hear Austin Wiley for Auburn, and I can't help but think I just want to say, how do you do, Mr. Wiley? You remember the Ernest T. Bass episode there. Okay, all right, so we got that in. All right, hey, shifting gears, folks. Let's talk football a little bit. Spring football starting at Ole Miss on February the 28th. The Grove Bowl will be April the 6th, a 3 o'clock Grove Bowl followed by a 7 o'clock baseball against Florida. One nugget kind of making the rounds right now, still fluid. I don't know that it's been decided, but the Rebels could be losing running back Eric Swinney as a graduate transfer. That's been reported by the Ole Miss Spirit. And, I think they're in conversations right now. But it's interesting, Logan, because he was such a highly recruited running back. I remember him as part of the 2015 class. And Hugh Freeze, the coach then, told us, look, he was the guy. They targeted him. He was a top 15 high school running back. They went after one running back. They got him, and they really sold out for Eric Swinney. And he was living up to those expectations in practice before the injuries set in. He had the foot injury, then followed by the ACL against Florida State in that 2016 opener. Bottom line is Eric Swinney has had a couple of years now to try and get back into the form that he showed as a highly recruited high school player and early in his college career, and he just has not been able to do that. So the running back picture is going to stack up interestingly, I think, for Ole Miss as new offensive coordinator Rich Rodriguez kind of begins to put more emphasis on the run. I don't know that they're going to have all the players to do everything that he wants to do in his first season, but I think they could be okay there with Scotty Phillips coming back. We all saw what he could do as a first-year junior college transfer. And the depth behind him, Isaiah Woolard was a capable backup. I don't think he's big enough to be the starter or to really challenge in that role, but he's a guy that gets things done because he runs hard and doesn't quit running, and he could be a capable backup there. But I think one to keep an eye on is going to be really two. It'll be Gerard Connor, the freshman, an early enrollee guy, the Hattiesburg quarterback, who played so well this season as a running quarterback and was MVP of the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. He's one that I think, especially with going through practice and the spring game, could really carve out a role if he adapts quickly. Watch him, and we'll see what they can get out of Devon Penniman. Eric Swinney was not able to come back from major injuries. Will that be different for Devon Penniman? A much bigger, stronger back. We'll see. But the running back position will be an interesting one as spring ball gets underway in February for Ole Miss.
Yeah, for Mississippi State, don't know exactly what day Mississippi State's going to start their spring ball. I do have a couple of players in the transfer portal, Parrish, wherever that's at, whatever that is. Mississippi State has got a couple players in there. Keith Mixon, a slot receiver for the last few years. It dealt with an ankle injury the last two seasons, just hadn't had a whole lot of production out of him because of the injury. Was a highly productive player prior to getting hurt midway season, but Keith Mixon's looking to transfer for his senior season. And then a tight end, Christian Roberson, a guy that was a sophomore this past season. He's played in appeared in 5 games, no catches. Mississippi State's really, really deep at the tight end position. He was kind of already getting passed up by a couple of true freshmen. If Roberson does indeed transfer, Mississippi State still going to have 5 at that spot. So, like I said, not just huge losses there from the transfer spot. So a couple of huge losses from the coaching perspective this week, though. Charles Huff, Mississippi State's running backs coach, left on Sunday. He's going to be Alabama's new running backs coach. So Mississippi State lost their running backs coach, and they lost their offense coordinator this week. Luke Getsy deciding to go back to the NFL, go back to the Green Bay Packers, where he came from last year. He was the Packers wide receivers coach. He's now going to be their quarterbacks coach. He's going to work with Aaron Rodgers back up there in Green Bay. So Mississippi State's without an offensive coordinator. That may sound like a huge thing. It's really not. It was more of just a title. Getsy was the wide receivers coach, but he held the title of offensive coordinator. Joe Moorhead calls the plays. So, just not a whole lot of decision making as far as Luke Getsy and, on actual game days. So Mississippi State's in the market for a wide receivers coach. They're also in the market for a strength coach. Anthony Paroli is also going back to the NFL. He's going to rejoin Bruce Arians. They coach together and with the Arizona Cardinals. He's going to the Bucs to be their strength coach. So Mississippi State's still in the market for a receivers coach, of an offense coordinator, and they're also in the market for a strength coach. So still a couple of things to be decided. It's a big recruiting weekend for Mississippi State this weekend, and they've lost a couple of cornerback commitments that they need. So that's a position of need that Mississippi State needs to fill between now and signing day in February. Need to get some cornerbacks in.
All right, Logan, we got about 5 minutes left, man. Women's basketball, what's going on with the Bulldogs?
Well, Mississippi State had this past weekend off. They beat South Carolina in a huge win last Thursday, and had Sunday off. And then they've got Ole Miss coming in on Sunday. This Sunday, got Florida tonight. Two games Mississippi State should be able to handle pretty easily. And I think these two games come at the right time for Mississippi State, because they're without Chloe Bibby. Found out, she goes down on the first play of that South Carolina game. Found out just after we finished recording last Friday, Chloe Bibby out for the year. That's a really big blow for the Bulldogs. She's their best 3-point shooter. Gave some good size at the 3 spot, a 6'1" Australian that can shoot the 3. They're going to have to figure out somebody to kind of fill that spot. And I think they're going to be able to kind of figure some roles out, in this games against Florida and Ole Miss the next couple of days before they get really deep into conference play after next week. So, I think these two games come at the right time for the Bulldogs.
Well, I would agree with that, even though Ole Miss has won 2 straight and goes for its 3rd straight tonight against Vanderbilt. We've talked a little bit about this women's team, which faced an unusual amount of attrition, moving from Matt Insel to Yolette McPhee-McEwen. And really, Logan, just 3 players on the roster who were there last year. And it's been a grab bag of transfers and freshmen, and everybody kind of getting to know each other on the fly. Well, now they've won a couple of games, and one of them was at Kentucky, then number 16 ranked Kentucky. They come home, they beat that Florida team. They score 76 points, win 76-66. Before that game, Logan, Ole Miss had scored 55 or fewer in its first 4 SEC games. So, I don't know that that the Rebels are about to take off and do great and wonderful things, but it's possible they could win tonight at Vanderbilt, which is 0-5 in the conference. Now, I'll also note that the Ole Miss ladies have not won at Vanderbilt in 32 years. So it's been a while, but this is a team that appears to be growing a little bit, and it's a team that a new coach is going to kind of get a pass on regardless of what happens. The abbreviated team and the circumstances being a little more unusual for this particular team. But, just because you have a grace period there doesn't mean you want to use it. And, Yolette McPhee-McEwen and these girls, they want to win. And they're doing that a little more than they were a few weeks ago. She says it's all about time on the court and just getting to know one another. And they've been able to do that. So we'll see if the Rebels can pick up a 3rd straight win tonight against Vanderbilt, that game in Nashville at Memorial Gym. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage. We thank you for clicking in with us today to talk Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Come back and join us next week.